Hi, I'm Sunny Carrito, a Youth Services Librarian at Pohick Regional Library. Today, I'm going to show you how to sew your own monster friend, or fiend. You get to decide since it's your monster. If you picked up one of our kits at the library for supplies, then you'll have a glove, a needle, so it's called a tapestry needle. It's a little bit larger than regular needles. Yarn. The kits come with blue yarn like this. Some beads. A small piece of felt. Some fluff for stuffing the inside. And if you got one of our kits, you'll also have this fuzzy yarn that's just kind of an extra little bit of fun, sparkly stuff to add to your monster as well. You're going to need to also add your own scissors. These need to be sharp enough to be able to cut the glove and the felt. I got the idea for this craft from croakertalk.com, which is a website that has lots of different craft ideas, especially lots of upcycling ideas where you take something you'd normally throw it away and make it into something fun and useful. First thing you need to do is turn your glove inside out. The supply list is really just a beginning idea suggestion. There's lots of different things you might want to add to your glove. You have buttons sitting around or shells. There's lots of other things you could use too. Once our glove is inside out, we need to trim off two of the fingers in the middle of the glove, the ring finger and the middle finger. We need to make sure that we have a little bit of room where we're cutting off the fingers, so you can use your thumb as a guide, about as wide as your thumbnail. I'm going to go that far up from where the finger attaches to the glove, and cut from there. We're going to be using one of them as an arm for our monster and the other one as the tail. And this will make it so that the pointer finger and the pinky finger can kind of be like horns or ears. Next, we're going to thread the needle. We're going to take a piece of thread first. You can take it about from your fingertips down to your elbow to kind of measure how long of a piece and clip it off from the rest of the yarn that we have. Now we're going to try to put the end of our yarn through this little hole in the needle. You can twist the yarn a little bit with your fingers. It might also help you to put your arms flat on the table to help steady your hands to be able to thread the needle. Now we're going to be sewing the seam of the top of our glove. The seam is when two pieces of fabric, so we start by putting the needle through the fabric at one of the corners of this hole here. I'm going to go straight through both pieces. I'm going to pull the thread carefully through. And when I do that, I'm going to make sure that I hold my finger at the end of the needle where the thread is. So I'm holding the thread and the needle together so that it doesn't pull out. And then I'm going to carefully pull it so that I still have this little tail here. Then I'm going to put the needle back through just very close to where I did before. Not the exact same hole, but just right next to it. And I'm going to pull it through. And then I'm going to use the yarn and the tail. And I'm going to tie it together into a knot. This is going to lock the end of our seam really nice and strong. I'm going to double knot it. Now I'm going to put the needle through the fabric a little bit farther over from where it came out on one side. I'm going to pull it through to the other. And then do the same thing. Put the needle over through a little bit next to it. Notice I'm doing this with some space between the edge of the cut and the rest of the seam. It's important to leave that little space so that the glove doesn't unravel. You need to be careful to not pull too tight when you're doing the seam. You want it to be snug. You're going to make it so that the loops are nice and close, but you don't want it to be super tight. If you pull too tight, it'll make it really bumpy. This is called the running stitch. It kind of makes little tiny bars or dash lines all the way across. Now that I've reached the end of the hole and covered up all of the seam, what I'm going to do to tie up this end, I'm going to take my needle and put it through the last little loop of a stitch that I had on here. And I'm going to kind of make it into a circle. And then instead of pulling all the way tight, I'm going to put the needle through that circle and use that little stitch to create another knot. And I'm going to do the same thing. Put it through the stitch, put my needle through the circle, and then pull it tight. Now we're going to turn our glove right side out. This is a little test monster that I did, and you can see it's got two different eyes. It's got one that uses the felt and one that uses one of the beads, and it's also got the beads for its mouth. So first you need to cut the eyes out of the felt. You could make them really perfectly circular by tracing a coin or something like that first. I think it's more fun to make them a little bit different and imperfect. I think they give the monsters a little bit more character. Once you have your eyes figured out, you're going to take them and fold them in half and very carefully cut a very small hole in two places on each eye. You don't want to cut all the way through your felt to cut the whole thing in half. You just want to cut it just until it starts to cut so that you have somewhere for the needle to slip through. You've got lots of felts if you need to do some extras or if you want to have lots and lots of eyes. Next, we're going to thread our needle again. This time we're just going to knot the end because when we sew on the eyes, it's not going to be pulled on the way that their seam is going to be pulled on with the stuffing. So it's okay to just double knot the end to secure our yarn this time. Now we're going to sew on the eyes. We're going to be going from inside the glove, so it might help you to kind of fold up the cuff a little bit to reach it easier. We're going to put the needle in the glove from the inside. We're going to make it come out exactly where we want one of the eyes to go. And then we're going to slowly, carefully pull the yarn out. Start to tug just a little bit when it hits that knot, because you could still pull it out if you try too hard. You're going to put the needle through one part of an eye, and then once you pull it all the way out, you're going to put the needle back in over top of the eye and through the hole. And then, using your hand inside to make sure that the needle doesn't go all the way through to the back of the glove, push your needle with the hand inside the glove to the location where you want the other eye to be, and make it so that the needle comes out there. So instead of going back and forth, you're finishing the second part of the first eye and starting the second eye at the same time. Now we're going to attach it the same way and keep going for however many eyes you'd like to give your monster. Next, we're going to add the beads for the mouth. We don't have to cut our yarn. We can keep it from when we attach to the eyes. And after you go inside the glove to finish attaching your last eye, when you come out where you want the mouth to start. Once you pull your yarn out, push the needle through one of the beads. The pony beads are just a little bit smaller, so you might have to push a little bit, but they should fit easily. And then put your needle back in to the glove pretty close to where it first came out. And you'll be able to attach the bead nice and steadily. You can keep doing this, going in and out, attaching one bead at a time. And that'll make it so that the mouth of your monster stays the same all the time. A little bit easier way, and maybe a little bit more fun, is to bring your needle out for where you want the mouth to start, and then put on all of the beads that you want for the whole mouth. It'll be a little bit more beads than will fit all the way across so that it can have a little bit of slack. And then instead of sewing on each individual one, you can just have a line of beads that you then attach just back at the end where you want your mouth to end. And then those would be a mouth that you could actually move up and down and change, which would be another way to do the mouth. I'm using that same way of finishing off the yarn with this, where as we did with the seam at the top of our glove, where I'm going to put the needle through the edge of one of my stitches from inside and make a double knot around that stitch, through that stitch. Now it's time to stuff our monster. You're going to want to take pinches of the stuffing and just keep putting them inside the monster. You're going to need to push with your finger to get it to go into the different ears and the thumb and stuff like that. You're going to have to keep pushing a lot. And it won't necessarily feel like it's all going in, but it will definitely keep going in there. It's just kind of has to be compacted a little bit before it really gets in. You've been given a certain amount of stuffing in your supplies. If it's not enough stuffing to make your monster as full as you'd like, You could add some fabric scraps, loose socks, plastic bags, cotton balls, all different types of things. You also need to go back and stuff the extra fingers that we cut off, so that you'll be able to start sewing them on as well. To make the thumb stick out more the way that the other arm is going to, I'm going to kind of fold the edge of the thumb where it meets the glove in a tiny bit and just put a couple of stitches there really quick, going from inside the glove and out around the edge of the thumb, just so that it kind of lays a little bit different, so that it'll be more similar to the way that we are going to attach the next arm. You're going to pick up the arm that you've stuffed and use the slightly longer finger for this one. And you're going to just curl the edges that are kind of ragged from where you cut in a tiny bit and kind of pinch it closed so it looks a little bit like a belly button. We're going to use the same yarn that we used for the thumb, and we're going to take it up through the inside and have it come out the glove around the same height as the thumb is on the other side. And then we're going to just pierce through the edge of the cut off finger and go back and forth from inside, just grabbing a little bit of the edge of the glove and attaching it to the edge of the finger. And you're just going to keep going stitch after stitch, attaching the edge of the finger and closing up the edge of the finger at the same time. This is a really visible stitch. That's okay. It's kind of like a whip stitch is the name of it, although that's usually used in a slightly different way. And I don't mind that it's visible. If you do, there's other things you can see later on that we can do to kind of cover it up some. Cover it up some. You're going to attach the tail to the back in the same way. When you get to the edge of the finger, insert the needle back into the glove and pull it out through the inside bottom of the glove, and then go back out the same place that you want the tail to be. We're going to attach in the same way. You should point the tail down when you're attaching it. That will help it stand up. Now you're going to want to get another piece of yarn for this part. I didn't, and it got too short, and I kept falling off my needle. But you should probably go ahead and get a new piece of yarn. And now we're going to use our same running stitch to stitch up the base of our monster, the base of our glove. You can roll up the edge of the cuff if your glove is large enough. Some of the gloves that went out in the kits are pretty small. And if you're using a glove that you've outgrown, it might be one that's pretty small and hard to do. But if you can roll up the bottom part of the cuff, it does make it a little bit easier for the monster to stand up. The tail helps with that too. When I reach the end of the seam connecting the bottom part of the glove, I'm going to go through and just insert the needle from the bottom of the glove up through a random spot on my monster. And then I'm just going to pull out the yarn. I can make it nice and tight and then snip it close to the monster and give it another, pull it tighter than we've normally been doing. Snip it really close to the monster and then let the monster go, and the yarn will stay hidden inside. Now I'm just going to add a little bit of extra flair to my monster using that yarn that we have that's kind of fuzzy. So I'm going to use it just to kind of give my monster what looks like a little bit of hair on top of his head. This can also cover up places where you have stitches. On my other monster, I used this to wrap around its arms to cover up those stitches that attached it. I hope you had fun making your friend or fiend today, and I hope that you will share your pictures on social media with us